So happy to have you with us this week on the show. I am joined by Carolyn Cahn, RN and NLP practitioner. She's got terrific tools in addition to neurolinguistic programming, IEMT, hypnosis. She helps people break through the blocks that might be holding them back to reach success, to clear old stories, to resolve old patterns, and to move forward in life. I love connecting with nurses on the show. As a nurse's daughter, I love the breadth of experience and the perspective, and I know you're going to get so much out of this conversation today. Thanks for joining us this week. It's time to flip the script on stress and learn how to thrive today and throughout your days. Join me for inspiration and interviews with folks who are shining their light in the world in the areas of positive mindset, health, and well-being. I'm your host, Susi Vine. Let's get happified. Welcome back. I am thrilled to have you with us. Join me in welcoming Carolyn Cahn, a seasoned success coach and registered nurse, bringing over 35 years of experience from public speaking with advanced degrees and certification in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, to the newbies in the house, coaching, IEMT, and hypnosis. She expertly guides audiences in overcoming low self-esteem, ADHD, and burnout. Carolyn specializes in releasing negative emotions tied to memories, empowering individuals to achieve personal and professional fulfillment. Her compassionate, results-driven approach have helped clients find satisfying careers, improve relationships, and increase revenue, making her a trusted voice for lasting transformation. Thank you, Carolyn, for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And I have a soft spot in my heart for nurses. I was raised by a nurse. That might be why I like to take a look at stress and health and cultivating positivity, because I know it can be a very, very demanding profession. And people who land there tend to be those who are heart led. Can you share a little bit with how you came to be where you are and perhaps how that nursing history has informed that journey?
So I started off in nursing. My background's emergency room, and then I wound up in home health, visiting people in their homes, and then occupational health, helping people in industry. And I needed a master's degree living on the East Coast, so I wound up at a university that forced me to move to California to finish my residency for college. So that's how I wound up in Los Angeles. And then I had a continuing education need for nursing. I wound up enrolling in a hypnosis program through a Dr. A.M. Krasner, who's one of the more modern leaders in hypnosis. And I got hooked. And then from there, I started improving my skills, went into Reiki and eye movement and NLP and all the other things that I eventually discovered.
I love it. So it was really that ongoing education that kind of
Mhm.
led you to places you didn't even know you were looking for.
Yeah, it was accidental on purpose, yes. Because things happen to you and for you, yes.
I love how life unfolds that way. Reiki kind of opened the door for me in that regard too. First studying homeopathy and then Reiki, and suddenly you look back and say, "Oh, I understand how all of that led me to exactly where I'm supposed to be right now." And so did you start integrating that as you were working as a nurse, or did you see from the beginning that these are two kind of different ways that you can be able to support people?
I saw it truly in both ways. I began the practice of you become more attuned into patients' needs as you build your skills. And so for me, the more aware I was, the more conscious I was of people's needs. When people were more anxious, I was able to help them. I remember I was on a plane one time. They always ask, "Is there a medical person?" And I always put my hand up. And this woman was having an anxiety attack. They thought it was a cardiac. And I'm like, no, 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 trust me, it's anxiety. So I literally sat with her the rest of the hour and a half plane ride. So it really, I've become more tuned into understanding when people are having a mental health concern, and am really good at helping them to calm down to the point where they can take over control. And then I've incorporated that in my daily, every life, even in just with friends.
It becomes a superhero skill, doesn't it, to be able to see
Really does.
below the surface what's just out of people's frame of reference and help them connect with what might really be going on. I like to say, I don't know, I wish I could give credit to the source, but we can't read the label when we're inside the jar, right? So to have somebody show up at the right time with the right insight and just be able to help us see a little more clearly is so empowering.
It really is. And then the NLP, the neurolinguistic part, with using language to help people. So I worked in a jail for 25 years, and I got really good at getting the answers I needed when I did the intake because people weren't forthcoming with information. So it was really a helpful tool for me, used ethically.
Well, I love how that kind of fits together. Again, in unexpected ways, right? Partnerships that give you a little bit of an edge against somebody else who might be sitting across the desk trying to get this information. And what an interesting population to be there to support.
Yeah, because I really do believe everybody deserves the chance to have help. And I've always gone with the addict of, if I help one person in my lifetime, it will have been worth
Well,
it.
I
Will
really do
never.
believe those ripple effects are so powerful. And in studying positivity and positive psychology, when I first heard that 3 degrees of positivity, that a positive interaction has 3 degrees of impact, really stayed with me. That the work that we do to center or strengthen ourselves helps those around us and it keeps moving forward in ways that we can't begin to recognize. So truly lasting impact through the course of your career, I'm sure. And we both come from that passion or curiosity, deep intrigue with stress and how that shows up in our lives. And as I mentioned, my mom worked as a nurse throughout her career. And so I could see how stressful work impacts life and health and has consequences in that regard. In your experience and with your perspective, what do you believe that we can learn or understand from stress and how it's showing up in our lives?
Which is a great question because
Diving
everyone
right in
has
with the
stress,
big stuff.
right? Everyone has a level of stress. So I find with a lot of people, there's avoidance and ignoring the telltale signs. And what happened is people continue to move forward in their life, realizing that things aren't going well. And the more you ignore it, it snowballs and it becomes this, it's like you're building a snowman, right? It starts with a little ball and it just keeps going. And eventually the wind comes and topples you over and you've waited too long. So I find for a lot of people, there's the recognition that life is challenging. They might begin with some bad habits, and for some people, it's overeating or smoking or drinking or gambling, and it becomes an escape mode rather
Mhm.
than dealing with the issues and taking charge of their life.
And so when people come to you with these issues, I imagine that's when they come for support with NLP and trying to correct or transform their habits. Do you feel like they're aware of the source, or is that part of your process with them and helping them get to the root of the matter through your work?
Right. I think a lot of people think they know what the source is. And then as we begin to talk, I find that many people are surprised at that may be what you're thinking, but there's a history behind you that you never addressed, and
Mhm.
helping them to understand where the stress really is coming from. So it's funny because oftentimes it could be from childhood, that issues that you weren't even aware of, and it may not even be something in your own life. It may have been an experience through TV or through hearing it from other people, and you incorporate that and you don't even realize it.
And that is the case where I believe we really do need a guide along the journey to help us see where we've been, where we want to go, how that course can be corrected to make that a little easier. And I know in addition to some of these habits that might have health issues coming along with those, but other habits like procrastination can really set people back. Do you see a connection there between stress and procrastination?
Yes. So the reason people procrastinate is, but there's a variety of reasons. Part of it is there's a big fear, there's unfamiliarity of what they're doing, there's a challenge that they're not ready to deal with, or they've had a bad experience before and they're afraid to go through it again. And for some people, it's they're the perfectionist and they don't think they'll do it right. And then they get stressed out, and then the emotions get in the way, and then I'll do it tomorrow, because if you keep putting it off, you don't have to deal with the issues.
Or flirt with that perfectionism coming in to criticize what you do finally try to deliver?
Exactly.
And so would you say that those are some of the prevailing kind of expressions, procrastination, perfectionism that ride along with some of the habits that people believe they're coming to you to solve?
Yeah, I think there's that. There's also a lot of avoidance, and then there's also people build a character to avoid the person they don't wanna be. So I'd find that some people either pretend to be something else or build certain skill levels and ignore the other ones that really need to happen or be incorporated to be successful, right? So a good
Yeah.
example would be a person who really wants to advance in their career, but they won't put the application in because they believe that they'll never get it. So then they tell themselves, oh, but I'm really good at this. I wouldn't be good at that anyway. So then they convince themselves that, "Oh, I wouldn't be a good manager anyway," even though that was always their dream.
Yeah, those defensive mechanisms can really kick in, huh, to protect
Mhm.
us. Oh, that's not what I wanted, or that's not for me, or that sort of thing.
Right.
And I think too, sometimes we can get that perspective. We know what we should be doing, right? Pursue that advancement, set that goal, work towards something. We know what to do, but we fall off track or we just can't get started. When people come to you and they say they're feeling stuck, what do you see is that kind of struggle that they seem to be coming in?
Oftentimes, it's they are frustrated, and there's the recurrence of things in their life that just aren't working, or they're angry and upset and they don't know why. And for some people, they really come in saying, "I can't get what I want, and I heard you talking and you said you could help me, so what can you do for me?" So often people come in knowing they have a problem, but they don't know what to do about the problem and they need
Mm.
guidance, but
Mhm.
they're open to saying, "I need help." And what I like about the skills that I have and then the tools I use, I'm not a therapist. I don't wanna hear the story over and over, because every time you tell your story, you're reinforcing it into your unconscious brain, and that's not healthy. So when people tell me, "Oh, I've been going to my therapist 10 years, 20 years," I'm like, "Oh, there's something wrong here, right? You need to get to what the issue is, and then let us work to help you." And it doesn't take that long. If you're ready to work on it, well, you have to be willing to do the work, and it's not that hard.
I think that's really important, looking at when people are ready to do the work. And you were talking about people recognize they feel angry and frustrated. Where do you see those emotions coming from? Are they masks or are they symptoms of a deeper problem? Or is that maybe the indication that they are ready to work on it?
I would say all the above. For some people, they're frustrated, but they're not ready to work on it. So I think the person needs to know that there's a problem. They're frustrated, but they're at the point where they're willing to say, "I need help because I can't do this alone." They're not sure where to get help. And I find a lot of people have been window shopping. And sadly, they'll go to one or two practitioners, have a bad experience, and then they're ready to give up. So for me, sometimes I'm like the third, fourth, fifth person they're talking to, and they don't have that big a problem, but to them, it's a major problem because they've spoken to so many people and it hasn't worked, and it's just because it's the wrong practitioner.
And that can be tricky to unwind too. Not the right person to be working with, not perhaps the right tools, the most effective, or the method for where you are and what you're working on. For folks who aren't as familiar, can you give us a little bit of an overview of NLP and IEMT?
Sure. So NLP is the use of language to help a person maneuver around their challenges. And it is used properly and correctly, you're helping the person to get out of their own way because sometimes your brain stops you from hearing what you need to hear. So it's helping them go through the back door to get to the unconscious brain to say, let's help you. Are you ready for this? And you're working with a different part of the brain around what the person's consciously aware of so that they can't stop you and say, wait, no, I don't want to do that. And that's the brain safety mechanism trying to say, I'm not ready to change.
Got
And
you. Thank you for answering that question because that's what I wanted to come back to. That safety mechanism. What do you
Mhm.
think that's coming from? Is that kind of part of the perfectionism, the I've been burned once, not twice kind of?
So what happens is you have the unconscious brain and the conscious brain. So the unconscious brain is maybe 90% of your brain function. And it's not a physical unconscious brain, but it's how your brain is and functions. And I liken it to a storeroom. So you think of a storeroom with file cabinets. Every time that we've had an experience, a reaction, we have a file in the file cabinet and we store tons of files, thousands of files. And the older you get, the bigger the file room. And what happens is you have an experience or you have a need to react. And that's the conscious brain. So the unconscious brain, there's a little guy running back and forth, pulls the files, throws it up to the conscious brain, who then says, oh, based on all the things that have happened before, this is how I'm supposed to react. And then the conscious brain says, okay, this is how I'm reacting. This is familiar. I know this is safe for me and I need to keep my body and my person safe. So this is how I'm going to react. So it's a learned behavior and it's a repetitively learned behavior.
Got you. And I know I'm taking us off course. I'm not even letting you answer the question I asked you, but we will come
Mhm.
back to it. And so I think this is a great place to kind of explore what I understand and try to share with people. And I'd love to hear how you describe this with the people that you're working with. The brain takes a lot of energy. It's a lot to direct and to move. And so we do kind of fall into these default networks, these programs. This is safe. This is what I can do. I'm going to get back in this groove and move forward. How do you help people understand that this little bit of work, this retooling helps to open up so much more potential and capacity?
I use something called IENT, Integral Eye Movement Technique. And what I do very early on is give them an example of how easy it is to separate the emotion from the memory. So, in a very brief time, we take one emotion or one memory, separate that emotion, and they see the difference. And now they realize, wow, if I can change this, I can change other things. So, sometimes a simple, let me show you how your brain works will help the person identify and understand that, wow, I can change it. I'm ready to change.
That's terrific. And thank you for getting into the IEMT because I didn't want us to
Mhm,
get too far off
mhm.
track from that. I think it's so exciting to be at this space where we can see and maybe better explain to people who are newer to these understandings that we can move beyond our biology, that the brain has patterns and ways to protect us, to teach us, to move us away from danger. And that can be exactly the reason why we struggle when we're trying to push ourselves to achieve certain goals. And that we can find ways to work with the biology and those memories to remove emotion from memories. The memories can teach us, but the emotions don't have to be holding us back. I think that's incredible. And what strength that must give the people as you're working with them to see, oh, I don't have to play it safe anymore because of that fear, that emotion.
It's amazing to me how we fight change so much. We all do, even though we could be PhD physicians, everybody has their normal. And we all think that with the skills we have and the better educated we are, the more we think we should be able to do this on our own. And we don't give ourselves grace.
Right? If I can just learn more, if I can just tell myself these new habits with this New Year resolution or the second quarter kicking off, and all I need to do is commit myself and work harder and stay up longer and put in more hours. And it's so hard to see people struggling that way and not giving themselves grace. And so, as you've been doing this work and helping people kind of unwind these patterns and reach towards their success, where do you see other patterns or things that often tend to hold us back? Low self esteem can be one of those. Again, I'm looking at this job I want to advance, but that's not for me. I can't really do that sort of thing. How do you see that coming into play with the people you're working with?
The one commonality I find with everybody is it's called self-talk. It's what you say to yourself when nobody's listening. So everybody has times where they say negative things to themselves. So imagine you're going through a red light by mistake and you realize it and you say these whatever you say four-letter words, and I get people to recognize when you're doing a negative self-talk, when you're saying something to yourself in your mind or out loud, if you stop it immediately and change out what you're saying to a healthier. So instead of all these negative tirades, you say, "Oh, thank God I didn't hurt anybody. I need to be more careful." Or even, "Thank goodness there was no cop around and I have to be more careful." But turning it immediately into a positive and getting more aware of what you say to yourself, because every time you repeat something, it's a hammer banging in that nail. And the more frequently you hammer it, the brains go, okay, I got it. So the people who've been told they're dumb, they're stupid, they aren't pretty, they're fat, they're this, they're that. You hear it so many times that you've incorporated that belief. And if you say it to yourself, you're just reinforcing it. So start changing it and your brain will begin to learn the new thought process, and everybody has negative self-talk.
And I think it comes along with our history. It comes with that way that stress is designed to teach us things. And I think it is so important to remember and to work with someone like yourself who can reflect to us that we can rewire ourselves. We can overcome that basic programming, the way that stress shows up, that attraction that we have to everything we did wrong, everything that life did wrong to us. And I think that's an important reminder. So thank you for highlighting that, that it takes practice to rewrite these stories, to retrain our responses. Do you find that in working with people with your modalities, it seems to me that they nest together pretty nicely. IEMT might
Mm,
be one of the more rapid results for specific things, but the NLP can help us play the long game in terms of reprogramming. How do you see those work together?
and then I use hypnosis at the end to reinforce what people have agreed upon. So what I like about hypnosis is we plan and we discuss what a person wants to achieve. And then it's very relaxed state when I basically feed back what they've agreed to do. So if a person, let's say, wants to lose weight and they say, okay, I'm willing to do A, B, C, D. Okay, great. Then in that relaxed hypnotic state, I reinforce what they've agreed to do. So the NLP and the IEMT I use to help them identify what the issues are and to be very clear and begin to clean up the past issues so that they can move forward and then identify where they want to go and move towards the future. And then the hypnosis, and I give them the tape so that it consistently reinforces what they said they're willing to do. So the modalities work so well together.
I really love that, and it does, right? Help us come back to it, remember that agreement that we've made. And as you're describing those, it hits me in that Western medical terminology, acute problems, chronic problems, and the way that we need to address them all. They're a little bit different in the approaches and in the ways that they show up in our well being. But I think it's important to recognize some things are acute and some things are chronic.
Right. And there's oftentimes the acute doesn't go away. So I look at people with PTSD as an example, post traumatic stress syndrome. They've had repetitive incidences in their life. And then there's that one that just pushes them over the edge. That for many people, it's not that one incident. Now, it could be for some people, but for many people, it's a cumulative trauma, no
Mhm.
different than somebody who has a bad wrist or a bad back. It's not that one injury, it's the repetitive injury. In the brain, it's the same way.
Yes, I think that's important for people to understand and again to give themselves grace. Some people talk about trauma with the big T, the one incident that could impact the rest of your life if you let it. And little t traumas, the little things that accumulate and have more influence over our lives and our reactions than we might recognize.
And it's hard to look at yourself and understand that. I would say most people don't. And it helps to have somebody sit there with you and start helping you to dig into it because I can't do that for you. I can be your guide, but I can't possibly know what things that you've had in your past. And oftentimes people don't even remember. And so, what I love about doing the IEMT work is that when you clear up one thing, oftentimes other things start getting cleared up and you didn't even realize it.
And as you said earlier in our conversation, talking with people and not needing the whole story, but being able to get to the emotions.
Mhm.
That's something in working with flower essences I was taught to do too, because people do tend to fall into their story. Misery loves company, and they get into this thing. Well, the reason I am the way that I am, the reason I haven't done this, the reason I can't be happy in a relationship. And you have to listen to the whole, right? It's because it's so rehearsed. When really what you need to know is how do you feel? Do you feel vulnerable? Do you feel rejected? Do you right? And so I really am fascinated by this. I'm not as familiar with IEMT. I'm familiar with EMDR, eye movement desensitization. How are they different? Is IEMT something that you can do without the machinery, if you will?
Yes, and that's what I love about it. So, with EMDR, it's a longer process. There's a lot of talk therapy that goes with it, and you are spewing out what the issues have been and continue to be. And from what I know of it, you can be in a program for as little as 6 weeks and as long as 3 plus months, depending on the practitioner. With IEMT, usually 1 or 2 sessions, we get to the root of the problem without going through the whole story because the what we're trying to do, what we want to do, the goal is to get your brain to understand that the memory will always be there. The memory's never gonna go away, and people need to understand that. You don't get rid of the memories, and you don't necessarily want to or need to. It's the emotion that's connected to it that you wanna separate so that when you have the memory, it's not a traumatic experience. So
Right.
when I talk about when I was assaulted, I talk about, well, I was assaulted, and it doesn't have to have all the horrendous emotions that go with it. You need to move on, and in order to do that, you need to get to those emotions, resolve those emotions, separate them away from the memory.
And I feel like that is really that turning point from post-traumatic stress disorder to post-traumatic growth when we can start to find the lessons, or as my friend Juliet Bastian says, the blessings and the lessons that otherwise we would be stuck in our story and say, nope, this is the reason I can't have, I can't do, I can't be, I can't feel safe.
and playing the victim. So I think for a lot of people, there's a comfort level of hiding behind a label, because if I have a label, then people will forgive everything. And it's like wearing a mask in public. I have this, whatever the illness or entity is, I have this blank, and therefore I can be blank. And let's take the curtain and open it and say, wow, there's a whole world there. I don't need to hide behind that label anymore. I can be comfortable with who I am and I can love who I am.
That's so interesting that people feel like that gives them permission to behave badly, to hold themselves back, and for them to be forgiven for it. Do you feel like that's part of that fear of failure, perfectionism kind of is what do you see is in play there?
I believe it's a combination. It's a discomfort in the unknowing, because if I let go of the rope, will I be safe? Then there's the past history that wasn't a positive one. And am I comfortable allowing myself to be exposed to that? And a lot of it's the unknowing and the discomfort. I
Yes.
don't know what will happen, therefore, I have to hold on to my safety line. When I deal with diabetics who've been on multiple medications for so long, and then I look at what they're eating and their health habits, and if you only are willing to do these things, you might be able to not take all these medications. No guarantees, but have you tried this? No. And there's that comfort level. Okay, I know the pills work, so I'm going to use my crutch and I don't have to work at it. So I guess the other thing is you have to be active and you have to do work. And a lot of people don't want to do the work. And you have to do work to make yourself heal, whether it's mental or physical. It takes an action, and you have to be willing to do an action, or your life's never going to get better. It's never going to change.
I think that's such an important part of what you're sharing with us is that it takes effort, it takes being ready to make a change. And it also takes that energy to move yourself forward. It
Mhm.
feels scary out there, but also it requires something of us to keep moving forward on that path. It's easy to sit back and say, oh, I want that, but I just can't get there from here. List the reasons why.
Yeah, and I can use myself as an example of, so I was assaulted in jail, and I was a few broken teeth, broken nose, broken eye socket. I fell, I was injured, PTSD, and I played the victim for 2 years. And then I was like, "Wait a minute, you have the tools, you teach this, what are you doing?" And used my own tools and then had some people work with me that I know using my own tools, but sometimes getting somebody else to help you is helpful. And, get back to functionality. It's such an easy thing to be a victim of a circumstance or to be comfortable in that, in where you are. And it really does take some energy, but it's the willingness. If you're willing to do something and allow yourself to be led to a more positive, you can really do so much.
Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you for sharing your story. And what the reason I say it's interesting is because one might think you've got your work, you've got these skills that you've been adding to your toolkit, you can see how things are, you're helping people, that you're doing the work and life should be easy because you're doing all the right things. And here comes this lesson, this really confronting, difficult, painful lesson. I can't imagine how it must have felt to go through that recovery. That's such an extensive physical injuries. And to really be brought to confront, like, are you ready to go through the process? Are you ready to go through that journey of healing and releasing?
And there, if you think about, life happens for you and not to you. I had to sit down and I had to think about, okay, what can I learn from this? because in every negative, there are tons of positive. And start looking at, all right, what are the positives I got from this? Because there were. And then allow yourself to feel good about the things that you've done to get out of the negatives, and you come out stronger. And every time you fight a fight and you win, you've got that little notch for yourself that you can say, wow, I did this. And it makes you stronger as you move forward. You have more skills. You feel better about yourself in a way that you can't really explain. And it also helps me to look at other people and go, okay, I've been there. I understand. I got it. All right, now let's move on.
Yes, I think life does serve up those lessons when sometimes we would rather say, I got the message. I don't need to learn the lesson, but here comes that lesson to make sure you really get it. And I think too, you talked about doing Reiki, so perhaps you can follow me on this one. This might be a bit of a departure for some, but follow along with us if you will. I feel like in our lives, sometimes other people in their life path have to learn a lesson. And some of us in that experience, that exchange, we need to be a victim so that they can continue on their lesson and their path. And because I feel like we can learn from it, we can learn from the experience, but also because in these situations, perhaps we have the capacity to recover, and that's why we're the one who gets thrown into this situation. When you want to say, life isn't fair, bad things happen to good people, how do we ever come out ahead when perhaps looking back, hindsight is always a much easier way to take things in. We can see that it wasn't personal, but you played an important part in different journeys and different lessons.
Yeah, well said. I think that being human, things are always going to happen. And every time you face something that is unfamiliar, you grow from it when you come out with a new skill. So it is how you learn to react. And these events help build those skills for you. And then you take those skills and you move forward.
And we can only hope that the other people who have been involved are, at some point in their life, coming to the lesson that they needed to receive.
And my way of dealing with that is may they get what they deserve, and that's not in my hands.
Right.
And then I give it up because I can only trust that the powers that be, God or whatever your beliefs are, that they will get theirs. It's not my place to make that decision.
Yes. And that release, whether you want to call that forgiveness, but I do think that releasing ourselves from waiting to see that judgment has been delivered, that wrongs have been righted is freeing. It's not for us to carry that and wait to see that determination. And do you see that some people are stuck for that reason? They're waiting to see somebody gets what should be coming to them, and that might be holding them back in some ways?
I think there's a lot of people that have anger that are in situations that they can't change. So, relationships, if you have family members that are constantly negative, that constant negativity, how do you deal with that? And that can be very challenging because, especially if you're in a relationship that's emotionally abusive versus physical abuse, which you recognize.
Mhm.
How do you deal with it? Are you willing to deal with it? Then how do you deal with people that are in your immediate circle? And then I help people look at their friends. And I had this discussion just yesterday with someone about you have to look at the people in your world and you have to make a decision if these people are good for you or not. And you have to look at what are you getting and what are you receiving in that relationship. And if it's all giving and not receiving, then you need to maybe cut the cord. And it's the same thing with family members. It how do you emotionally separate? What can you do to keep yourself safe? And there are ways to do that even if you can't get out of a certain relationship. So it's a lot of learning, and sometimes we just don't know how to do it. We need somebody to guide us.
Yes. And remind us that we have the strength. to help us cultivate the skills to help us and recognize our progress along the
Right.
way. I'm a big one for celebrating those
Absolutely.
small wins, and we don't tend to be able to do that for ourselves. So having someone like yourself reflect back, but remember, you might not have been able to have this response, have this healthy separation, or maintain these boundaries. That's so supportive.
And everybody's going to have these experiences. As long as we're in a world with other people. And post-COVID, there's been a lot of change in people, and it's for some people, they have personalities that didn't exist before. People have changed. So sometimes it's the what happened to the old person, hoping the old person comes back, and they may never come back. So there are times where we think we can fix things, but we can't. And it's also accepting that it's not my job to fix the other person. It's my job to keep myself safe and decide on how to be with somebody, help them understand me, and maybe guide them to working with me. But if they're not willing to change, you're not going to change them.
That can be a hard thing to learn, certainly in family dynamics, but we can't do the work. We can't change other people no matter what we might be able to see, what benefit might be just out of reach because they are stuck in these patterns. But we can do our own work and we can free ourselves.
Absolutely. And truly, sometimes sitting down with somebody and having that talk might result in a healthier relationship. So you
Mhm.
owe it to yourself to have that conversation at least once to see if you can get it to be a working relationship. But you have to do it gingerly in a way that you're not attacking. Yeah.
I love your experience and wisdom that you're able to bring to this through your work history and career, working in the different capacities as you have from emergency medicine to within the corrections system. I would love for people who are listening and feeling resonance here. I really think I could get through something, or I'm tired of this thing that is holding me back. How, for the listeners, certainly in the show notes and on my site, we'll have links so that you all can connect with Carolyn. But describe a little bit about how people can connect with you, find out more about how you work.
Super. So my website is my name. It's Carolyn Cahn, CarolynCah like Harry, N like Nancy. And it's carolyncahn.com. And I have a couple of freebies if you'd like to check them out. You can just go on the website and click on the right-hand column free. And then if you are interested or think you might be interested, you can have a free consult with me. Click free and put your name in there, and we can have a conversation to see how we might work together. And not everybody's a match, and I don't always want to work with other people, and they don't always want to work with me. So it's nice to have that brief conversation to see if there's a comfort level and if we feel that we can work together.
Yes, perfect. Thank you for that. I think sometimes people are afraid to reach out, like, oh, I'm going to get sold whether I need to or not. But it's an introduction, it's an opportunity to begin a conversation and decide if that conversation should continue.
Absolutely.
And thank you for making resources available. I find that a lot of givers come and join me on the show, and these resources too can just be a starting point. Provide that opportunity for a light bulb moment to say, oh, I could be ready to let this go.
And it's also a good opportunity to just explore and learn a little bit. So I do have a little bit of education on the website if people are interested in just reading a bit more about IEMT and hypnosis. It's there too.
Wonderful. And before we go, is there anything that we didn't get into today that you would love to leave folks with?
I would ask everybody to walk away with the one thought of something that you can do immediately, and that is start working on your self-talk. And what I said about learning to recognize what you're saying, immediately catch what you're saying, and then immediately change it to a positive. And if you do that and nothing else, you'll start to see a change in your life. And it's the repetitive positive that you need. So just be aware of what you say to yourself.
Yes, that reflexive shame or blame, we can retrain ourselves. And like any habit or practice, it can take some remembering, it takes some coming back to, but it gets easier and easier over time. So that's a wonderful
Definitely.
reminder. Thank you for leaving folks with that.
And thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Carolyn, for sharing your message. I'm excited to share this with the audience. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for listening. You'll find all the resources we discussed today online at happifiedlife.com, along with links to subscribe to Happified on your favorite player and a handy search tool so you can search all of our previous episodes. Help us grow by leaving a quick review and share this episode with a friend. Until next time, keep on shining.